Property Pulse.
Sponsored by Espace Real Estate. Think Dubai Real Estate. Think Espace Real Estate.
Right, we are talking real estate this morning. We're about the middle of October, and it is Q3 numbers time. Particularly love the numbers that we get from real estate companies telling us what they themselves have seen on the ground, opening their books when they don't have to because they're not publicly listed companies. And one that always does so is Espace Real Estate. John Lyons, Managing Director, on the line for me now. Morning, John.
Good morning, Brandy.
I recognise where you are, John.
Yes, I'm in the studio.
I am not John.
Yes, I decided that this was the best setting rather than being on Teams, so here I am.
Do you know what? I appreciate the fact that you have got in your car and driven to our studio to make sure that you have good sound and clarity. Right. I want to dig into your Q3 report, and I want to look at what you guys at Espace have seen. We've been through the Dubai numbers a little bit, but I'm interested in your own experience on the ground. A 148% year-on-year increase in new property listings for you over the quarter, a 77% rise in buyer registration. What was the Q3 like for you?
Yeah, the Q3 was excellent for Espace. We are 42% up for revenue year on year for Q3, so it's been a great quarter. The summer period, which usually is a slower period, was actually an incredibly busy period for us. If we look at the start of the quarter in July, we were selling properties at 80 million dirhams, 65 million dirhams. So the higher value of the market continued to operate really with great enthusiasm from those buyers. So yeah, it's been a good quarter so far.
I'm interested in nearly 100, we'll call it 150% increase in property listings, a 77% increase in buyer registration. If that trend continues, are we going to see supply outpacing demand?
I don't think so, because at the moment people are putting their properties on the market and with the intention of selling, and quite often they will change their mind and decide to rent it if they don't get their price. So there's within those listing stats, we see a different range of buyers, different range of sellers. Some are seeing it as an opportunity to try and get their price and exit the market, while others are genuinely serious about selling. Let's say it's their family home and they're upsizing or downsizing, and those sellers are the ones that go on the price discovery journey and then are more likely to exit the market, whereas opportunistic sellers that don't necessarily get their price can quite often decide to rent it instead. So sometimes the listing stats can distort the actual availability of stock in the market.
Yeah, I noticed that you've got a 33% increase in price reductions compared to the same quarter last year. Is that the price discovery journey, or are properties becoming harder to shift?
I think that would be natural. When we see more listings, then naturally we're going to see more price reductions that go with that, because it is the case that pretty much every listing that comes onto the market does go on a price discovery journey, and quite often they are priced slightly more ambitiously in the early phase of the listing than a few weeks down the line. So when you see listing volume increase, then naturally you will see price reductions also increase.
Those lower transaction volumes, though, in the communities that you track, you go through, I think it's about 30 odd communities in this report every quarter. There are a lot of red arrows comparison year on year. Should we read into those?
Well, there's 34 communities tracked in the report, and those are what we consider to be many of the most well-known communities in Dubai. And you're right to point out that in the villa townhouse communities, as an example, there's 8% less transaction volume. But when you look at the overall secondary market at the earlier pages of the report, you will see that transaction volume is up in the secondary market by 2% year on year, and the value is up by 11%. So it is the case that there are more communities on offer today than was the case last year, and therefore you're seeing demand going into more communities all over Dubai now.
I was also really interested in the leaderboard that you put together when it comes to transactions by developer, your off-plan sales in Q3. We've often long thought of this as an Emaar and Nakheel dominated city, but your top three slots here actually go to Benghazi, Damac and Shoba. What does that tell us?
Yeah, that sometimes when you're looking at a report of only one quarter can distort the overall picture to some extent. I would prefer to look at over an entire year who are the biggest players when it comes to delivering properties. But certainly the big developers noted there on the report, clearly they're big players in the market. The brands are very well known. They're delivering great communities, and from one quarter to the next, you will see that change just depending on which project is being launched or which project has availability of stock at any given quarter.
I've got 1 minute left with you, John. The majority of us actually don't buy, still rent. You say the rental market is becoming more mature. What does that look like?
The market's becoming more mature. You're seeing people looking in other areas now for better value, so we can see less transaction volume, for example, in Dubai Marina, and people looking in somewhere like JVC where there's been an increased number of transactions. I think that we see prices not rising as fast in the rental market as would be the case in the sales market, and therefore we're seeing yields compress a little bit. But certainly the rental market is still very healthy in Dubai. That said, I do see this trend continuing where people don't want to really spend too long in the rental market. People that arrive in Dubai might spend 1 or 2 years in the rental market, and then they do have a desire to get onto the ladder themselves and to buy.
John Lyons, Managing Director of Espace Real Estate, thank you so much, not just for joining us this morning, but for making the trip into the Dubai Eye studio. Your commitment to sound and audios, and indeed our branding, is appreciated.